Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I should firstly make it clear yesterday that when I questioned the wisdom of going ahead with next week's recess, I was in no way suggesting that the staff of the House should not get the leave to which they are entitled. I was simply wondering whether, given the current emergency, it might be possible to do that without closing the business of the Chamber completely. But if we are to go ahead with the recess, then I would seek an assurance from the Leader of the House that there will be no dramatic changes in government policy whilst the House is unable to question ministers. And if such a change is required, the House will be recalled to consider it. Now, can I go to the fantasy that the Leader of the House is extolling, that we can go back to the way things were on June the 2nd without special procedures being in place? If he genuinely believes that, I have some specific questions. How can 650 members of Parliament possibly work safely in a building of this size and layout? What should happen to those who are shielding and has received a letter from the Chief Medical Officer? What should happen to members if they belong to one of the identified vulnerable groups? What procedures will apply in the light of a member becoming symptomatic or being diagnosed as having the virus as a result of turning to this place? And should members in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland ignore the advice of their respective governments to work from home? In my view, to try to force members to return to this Parliament in person without these questions being answered is unbelievably reckless, and it will place members, staff and the wider public at risk. It will also disenfranchise many. I asked the Leader some weeks ago what exactly requires the physical presence of MPs in the Chamber and what aspects of our job cannot be done remotely. I have yet to receive an answer. Is it therefore the case that his decisions are motivated not by necessity, but by personal preference?
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Honourable Gentleman crackled through the ether, hard to hear, hard to be clear on what he was saying, and his complaint was that we who were in the chamber had an advantage that was unfair on those who were remote. Today, it's unfair that we should be here in person at all because we should all be as disadvantaged as he is by being remotely. That, Mr. Speaker, is explanation in itself about why we need to come back, because the chamber isn't operating properly when it is done on a remote basis. And the numbers, the Palace of Westminster, the acres of space on the Palace of Westminster aren't large enough for 10% of the people who work here on a daily basis, if not less, to be here. The chamber is marked out for spacing for social distancing. We can get 50 people into this chamber, which, it has to be said, is as many as often in here for an ordinary debate. It is only on high days and holidays and Prime Minister's questions that the chamber is bursting at the seams. There is no change, Mr. Speaker, as you so rightly said in your statement, to the social distancing advice. There is no change to the advice to member staff to continue to work from home. The numbers coming into this estate are a fraction of what they normally are because we have no tours, we have no commercial banqueting, we do not have the thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of people who come in every day. We are just requiring MPs to do their job because, as the Honourable Gentleman has eloquently pointed out to us over his electronic communication, their job cannot be done properly from a remote distance.